Greetings, everyone. So I had been kind of staying out of this whole dramatic, and it's way more than drama, unethical behaviors of Mike Rinder, people at the Aftermath Foundation. But I just feel like I should say something just because I just want to share how I feel about it. And I told you guys I was in nonprofit for many years. I never went up the ladder because I'm not I'm not one of those kind of players, you know what I mean? But I know the rules and ethical codes. And I've studied narcissism for a very long time. And the reason I studied it is because I found out one of my family members was like a super sociopath. It'd probably be labeled as a malignant narcissist, but I call her sociopath because of the fact that she liked to hurt animals. And anyways, no contact, obviously. And there's others, but I just feel like I should say something on how I feel about it. So I'm going to just cut to the chase. I personally feel a lot of people are giving it a lot more energy than they should, because the more energy that you give it, the more it's going to grow into like a type of energy that you don't want. So, and that's that whole law of attraction aspect. My personal opinions, like I initially thought Mike Rinder was a cool guy, on the surface. And I started studying cults, and then I watched the Aftermath show. And I was just devastated by all of that. And then I just went on this kind of rampage of watching ex-Scientologists. And then, I started watching SPTV. Then I started watching Scientology Audit, or better known as Film the Police LA or Streets. And, I've just been watching a lot of this stuff. I've stayed out of the whole Aftermath stuff because I did make like one or two videos on it, but I just felt like I didn't really want to get involved in it just because everybody else is involved. And I feel like I think I even called it that the Aftermath Foundation is going to kind of fall apart. But there's a lot of things. I probably should have made some notes, but I'm just going to wing it today. So initially, I was watching the YouTube videos, and then I had found the podcasts by Mike and Leah. And I really liked the information, that I was getting. So, granted, I was just like brand new in learning about Scientology. And it seemed pleasant enough. But, when you watch something on YouTube or you watch a TV show, sometimes it's not like that person, in everyday life. But I was just there to get the information. And I what do you call it? Marathon watched it, or what do you call that? Like when you watch them back to back to back, because I wanted to learn about what was going on. But now, as I've learned a lot more, and I've studied a lot more, and there's still more to learn, because I'm like a very, very. I was going to say well-known, but that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just known for being like a big-time conspiracy theorist. I have been for over 20-something years, maybe even longer. So it was just natural for me to get upset about what's going on with the children in Scientology. And I still am. So, and of course I know about the Illuminati and the 13 bloodlines and SRA and all those things, but I don't talk about that stuff because, not that I never talk about it, but it's one reason I took my other channel down. But anyways, so when all this stuff first started, like when Aaron got kicked off and stuff, my spidey senses were just going off. And I said, narcissism. I just felt it. I felt that Mike was jealous of Aaron. And I felt really bad for Aaron because, and I studied Aaron too. And I mean, anybody can study me if they want to, but you just kind of observe people to kind of feel them out and see how they are. And granted, it's YouTube, but you can kind of get a feeling. And to me, Aaron seemed so authentic and so well-intentioned and kind. Because I was just a little nervous. I'm like, is Aaron a narcissist when I first saw him? But I just didn't, as time went on, I'm like, I just don't see any of that kind of behavior. So when Aaron was kicked off of the Aftermath the way he was, I was just like absolutely disgusted. And I felt so much sadness for what Aaron was going through because he thought they were his friends. So Mike can lie all day long about how he created the Aftermath. That's the biggest bullshit story on earth. And I feel bad, and I have a lot of feelings about Leah still being in there with Mike, and I wish she would wake up and smell the coffee. But I feel like Mike Rinder is like 100% using her. Like 100%. And, perhaps one day she'll wake up. I don't know. But everything that was done to Aaron was, yes, it was all those Scientology policies that they follow in Scientology, but it's also narcissism. So I had also seen a lot of, because I was watching all of those SPTV videos when they'd have like 4 or 5 different people on, and they had a lot of videos. And on a side note, I noticed some behavior from Mark Headley to Claire that was questionable, and I believe it's free to have an opinion, so I'm not accusing anyone of anything in particular here, but Mark Headley seemed kind of mean. He did. Because I had that in my past when I was a young woman, I know when I see a man who's a bully, and they're all narcissists. When you boil down the soup and you get down to the bottom of the soup, it's narcissism. So when they were all doing that to Aaron, I was just like, narcissism, narcissism, narcissism. And then I thought, that's a hostile takeover, because that's exactly what it was. And then it just went on and on and on and on. And I just kind of stayed, I watched a lot of the videos, but I'm like, I am not going to consume my entire life with this stuff. I'm just not. I want to see the positives and the good coming out of people either leaving Scientology or other, good sets of news that we can celebrate. And it just kept going on and on with Rinder. I mean, what was it, the blog post? I didn't read it. I have no desire to read it. I heard enough about the things that he said to be appalled, disgusted, and also I am pretty gosh darn sure that sharing Miriam Francis's information online, I'm pretty sure that's a crime he committed, as well as Mike Brown. So in nonprofit world, you would have confidentiality. He completely broke that. As far as that goes, Mike Rinder broke the confidentiality when he was, spreading all of Aaron's personal business online, which turned out to be not true anyways. And it was nobody's damn business what Aaron was doing in his personal life. And I felt like it was exemplary that he came that Aaron came out and explained what was going on. You know, he was just being a stand-up guy by doing that, which Rinder clearly doesn't have any idea what a stand-up guy is. So those were some of my first thoughts on all of that. And I don't have a positive opinion about Claire Headley, only because, and I don't know her personally, I don't know her enough to know what she was like in Scientology. I do know a lot of people go against who they naturally are in Scientology, so I do think there should be some forgiveness. But I've heard a lot of people talk about her, and sounded like she was pretty mean when she was in Scientology. So you've got that. Okay, so I covered Rinder, Aaron, Mark Headley I have no use for. I see a lot of narcissistic traits in him too. Chris Shelton, forget about it. I see he's on the SPTV Foundation, but he's not my kind of. I don't care for that guy. And then, so I covered that. Let me see what else I was thinking. Oh, okay. So then the next chapter comes. And Rinder, because he has no sense, and I think he's a full-blown narcissist, kind of like ranging on the sociopathic type, to be really honest with you. He goes out, talks about Miriam Francis's abuse, her case, and is well, you know, when Miriam came out and explained what had transpired between her and Mike Rinder, I was like just disgusted. But not only that, I'm pretty sure a lot of the stuff that Rinder did right there was a crime, I think. Like criminal as far as him sharing her personal information online, but also the whole thing with, I believe Miriam was looking for a statement that her mother made or something, and all of a sudden it's disappeared, conveniently. And also, you know, I'd have to go back step by step. I don't need to cover it, like 500 other people have already covered it. But how Rinder was trying to make Miriam Francis sign this non-disclosure agreement, etc. I mean, like, it's just absolutely, completely crazy. And, you know, aside from the whole narcissism, because I could break down every little trait, you know, because, like, there's the smear campaign. He's doing the smear campaign with Aaron. I believe Rinder is so out of his mind with jealousy of Aaron that he can't contain himself. It's like, it's a tragedy, because one, Aaron thought that Mike was his friend at one point. Clearly, Rinder is really nobody's friend. And I wouldn't be surprised if anything happened down the line with him and Leah. Like, I don't feel that Mike Rinder is loyal to anyone. And on a personal note, it would be interesting to see everything that went on, because he married his wife that he's with now. But I know he was married when he was in Scientology. He just left his wife and his kids, and then at some point met this other young lady who I think she was married at the time, and then her and her husband. I don't know how exactly when it happened, because I'm sure there'll be a cover story, but I have a lot of questions about that. And it would be interesting to see what, I think her name is Chrissy's ex-husband had to say, if he's willing to speak out. But just on this whole ethical, moral bullshit stories that they were trying to push, my personal opinion, aside from this narcissism, is that you're trying to push that you are morally higher, like more ethical than Aaron Levin, Eric Smith Levin, when I'm pretty sure you have a lot of skeletons in the closet. And I have a lot of questions that I won't state publicly, because I don't want anyone coming for me as far as making some type of accusations, but I have a lot of questions. My personal opinion is that I think Rinder should be in jail. In prison. And I'll stick to that. Because it doesn't matter how many good deeds you've done since you've come out of Scientology, you cannot just wipe the slate clean from all the horrendous, diabolical, abusive, criminal, and more that you had done while you were in Scientology. And I will say I did kind of, Mike seemed like a nice guy on camera, but of course I didn't know him. And now I see that that was what he puts forth on camera. When Nora explained how he screamed at her, I said, oh, that was the real Mike right there. And anyone who can just be okay with how he treated Nora, birds of a feather. That's my opinion. So, and then, you know, there's quite a few really good YouTube channels. Like, I like Darth Sander. I love German News. And there are others. There was something about a thrift store. I can't remember the name of the channel, but it was something about a thrift store. There's quite a few old schoolers that had uploaded some really good videos. Like, they were the pioneers, like Tori Chrisman, who were out in the frickin' trenches when Scientology had a little more power. And also, back to when Rinder left, I forget what year he left. I personally feel, and I had seen somebody get interviewed today, a brand new, like, ex-Scientologist that came out and spoke to Selfless Self. Very good interview. Go watch it. And I like what he said, and I've been thinking of this. I think a lot of people have thought this. All of the abuse in that was fine with Rinder until he got put in the hole. And I mean, I don't want to just pick on Rinder, because I don't think it's just Rinder that was out doing all this dirt. I don't. But what bothers me is, one, he should not now or ever be on a nonprofit board. Ever. He has committed, I'm pretty sure he's committed a lot of crimes as far as what's transpired with Miriam Francis, what transpired with Mike Brown, who is a decorated war veteran. Hello. And I really admire, literally, Serge, who has been a maverick in standing to what is true and to whom Mike Rinder and some of these other people really are and were, such as Debbie Cook. And I finished another chapter with Jenna Miscavige's book yesterday. I forget, it was a chapter right after security checks. And, you know, I don't know, I may go back and read it a little bit more. But what I found interesting in there was Jenna Miscavige, she got into more trouble. The poor girl was always in trouble. And at one point, Rinder came in, Marty Rathburn, and Miss Rathburn, which they call Mr., which, I mean, that's just hint number one that mind control is real. So they all were surrounding this young girl who was 16 years old, like a bunch of bullies, asking her a whole bunch of questions. And who do you think gave Jenna Miscavige a security check? Marty Rathburn. So that goes to show that all of those vile, disgusting reptiles absolutely 100% understood that children were auditing grown men. Period. So like we used to say in the military, lottie-dottie and everybody. A lot of people need to be going to jail. And I do know there's a lot of Scientologists that are able to redeem themselves. They're not guilty, excuse me, they're not guilty of as many crimes as others because they're put into a pretty much a hellish situation. So, they have to do what they have to do to survive. But, as far as like really severe crimes like beating children or anyone that was allowing themselves to be audited by a child should have some kind of punishment. Period. I don't care how nice you are. Now, as far as the more serious crimes, like essay of children, covering up, anybody that covered up essay should go to jail. Period. End of story. So, I'm veering off a little bit here, but I really feel it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next 6 to 12 months. But my personal opinion is that Aftermath Foundation should be, this is my opinion, it should be completely shut down. I just, at this rate, they've already dirtied their name. And what else I wanted to bring up was that it is clear to me, and I steer clear from watching anybody talking about Rinder anymore. I don't want to hear it. And here I am talking about it, but I just want to share what's on my mind and then let it go. But Mike Rinder is so jealous of Aaron, and that whole thing was a complete setup, saying that Aaron wasn't adhering to moral and ethical standards, which it's pretty obvious that Mike Rinder doesn't adhere to moral or ethical standards, only when he's on social media. And I do kind of wonder, even though I don't really give a lot of credence to those hate websites or hate videos that are put out from Scientology, honestly, I believe now that his ex-wife was saying that Mike Rinder was abusive, and I believe it now. I absolutely do. So, the narcissistic mask fell off. He's mad. And so, he and other people, like all these, 72, 90-something-year-old, half-assed dead people, sorry, I have respect for the elderly, but how they're acting is just repugnant. Let it go. They won't. And birds of a feather flock together. I had questions about ATAC, but I'm not going to say too much here about him. But I think he's a little bit like, I don't know, I think he's kind of following Mike's lead and stuff, but, I think, like I said, birds of a feather. But all of the things that are going on now, Mike is like on a mission to completely ruin Aaron. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting. And then add in the fact of the whole thing that he did with Miriam Francis. Fired. Remember when Trump had that show where he's like, you're fired? You're fired. You're fired. And anybody who's just standing there and not saying anything to do the right thing, like Claire Headley hasn't really said anything. And I know she's probably in a situation, but I don't know her enough to really say a lot about her, but she hasn't come forth and done anything decent that I've seen so far. And as far as Leah Remini, and I'm not going to say anything too much bad about her, but I think she needs to wake up. That's what I think. And the actions that I've seen from Mark Headley online and things I've heard about him, not nice. Not a nice guy. They're all just jealous of Aaron. And that goes to all that narcissistic kind of things that went on in Scientology. I think that's who they are, to be honest. They need the titles, they need the cameras on them. And literally, how many people have been asking, what exactly has been done since Mike gave out all this information? Or, I don't know how much the Headleys are involved, but it's like, what exactly has happened? And they don't, and also, too, the people and forget this new woman who's on the frickin' board. She could kiss my butt. Disgusting piece of filth. But Jennifer, whatever her name is, it all needs to be shut down. I have removed my donation to Aftermath. I had a small monthly donation going, which I'm planning on getting sent to the SPTV Foundation, but I couldn't set up monthly the other day, so hopefully they get that fixed. But yeah, there needs to be repercussions and punishment for the things that they've done. And the fact that a lot of these really aged, older Scientologists won't speak about the child abuse tells you everything. Either you are an enabler in child abuse or you actively participated. That's it. Peace.